Hello, I'm Mehrnaz Campbell, founder of Chemia and author of The Omni Advantage. Welcome to our last episode of LinkedIn Live in 2025. And I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'm dialing in from Knoxville in Tennessee. And in case you don't know, Tennessee is one of the southern states in US. It's home to hometown of Dolly Parton's, country music, and University of Tennessee college football teams based here as well. I'm still new to this town and beginning to set roots. In fact, we're getting the keys to our new home tomorrow. But what about you? Where are you tuning in from, and what's special about where you live? I'd love to hear from you. So please drop a quick hello in the chat and share with me a little bit about your hometown as well. You know, at Chemia, our purpose is to unleash the human potential to create a healthier world. And my aim is to inspire pharma to shift from delivering messages to healthcare professionals to becoming their trusted advisors. Over the last 4 years, through these digital transformation episodes, I've invited and I've strived to spark connection, inspire change, and drive meaningful discussions that really improves the outcomes for healthcare professionals, but also ultimately for the patients. I'm really passionate about helping pharma to improve the way we engage healthcare professionals that adds real value. And that's why I've been interviewing inspiring leaders to learn from their experience and give them a platform so they can share their insights with you directly. Now, today, I'm really excited because I'm joined by Brian Shroyer, who's a global business and customer engagement leader. He's an expert in digital transformation and change management, and has most recently been working with Novo. Hi, Brian. It's so great to have you here, and thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's so great to see you as well. And maybe I will share real quick that as you move to Knoxville, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, which is about 3 hours, 2.5 hours south of where you come from or where you live now. So we can practice saying y'all if that would help you get accustomed to the South.
Do you know, my husband works locally, and since we've moved here, he keeps saying to me at work constantly, people in southern states say, I apologize. And the way they say it, I don't know whether I can say it. Can you say it, I apologize, in the southern accent?
Well, I apologize.
I think the intonation and focus on the words is different in different states, but here they say, I apologize. So anyway, I'll practice that one. And you're all. So before we dive in, let me introduce Brian in case you don't know him. And Brian's background really sets the scene for our conversation today. Brian has spent over 17 years shaping transformation across pharma, life sciences, and business-to-business technology. His strength is in modernizing commercial and medical teams for digital and AI age, while keeping the human side of engagement at the center. Brian has led large-scale omnichannel and capability programs across global and regional teams, help organizations build the right infrastructure and skills, and guided them through complex change in a really highly regulated environment that we work in pharma. What I personally really value most about Brian is his depth of his experience. He brings a blended perspective from different industries, cultures, and functions, which means he knows how to adopt transformation to what people really need on the ground. And I find Brian is very empathetic, collaborative, and passionate about creating cultures where people can thrive. And he has a gift for making complex ideas feel really practical and achievable. And I've seen him perform on stage using chair metaphors and all sorts to really communicate a really important message in a very succinct way. So Brian, it's great to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for the introduction.
Cool. So Brian, I usually talk about how I met our amazing speakers, and I just wanted to ask you, do you remember how you and I connected and how we met?
I do actually. Yeah, I had reached out to you. I think this was maybe about half a year after you had written, I believe, your first book, The Omni Advantage, and I was, working in customer engagement and digital transformation for Nova Nordisk across region Northwest Europe. And we were going to have a customer engagement conference across, for our affiliates, and I was looking for a keynote speaker. So I had reached out to you to see if you were interested in that opportunity, and that was the first time that we connected.
Yeah, I remember that. That was amazing. I remember you put a LinkedIn post,
Yeah.
asking speaker. You had written on a piece of paper and took a selfie of yourself. And I was really touched because a couple of people I know in Novo, including Venita, tagged me on the post and recommended you. And then you and I met and had a conversation. And I thought that was an amazing opportunity. I really enjoyed meeting the, omnichannel leaders across the whole Northwest region. And I think you also invested on both copies of the book for 100 people who were attending, because I remember I was busy signing them for the individuals. That was amazing. And I think since then, we kind of met online and we discussed the project. But since then, I met you face to face, I think for the first time in next event in Vienna. That was last year. And I think we met at the drinks reception that Dario organized. And then we hung around for those 2 days. And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
we also met as well. Go on.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Then we finally, met at Next in Vienna, October. I guess that was like 2 years ago. Um, and then we had like, it was great to connect and talk business. And then I remember, there was kind of like a networking dinner that we were involved in as well. And I just thought that was really great because then I got to know the human side of you and a little bit about your journey and your story. And it was really really good time. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think this year we actually worked together preparing one of the panel discussions in Dubrovnik,
Yeah.
where I was moderating the session where you and two other amazing speakers were on stage. So it was really good. I've kind of like, when I look back, Brian, it's actually a year and a half ago we met, less than 2 years ago. But it seems as if I've
Okay.
known you for a long time because you're very inspiring, and the way you speak, the way you present, and the way you come on across on LinkedIn is very genuine and
Hmm.
real to me. So it really resonates with me. So I just wanted to say to our audience, I've got loads of questions for Brian, but this is a live LinkedIn session. It's not about me. It's your opportunity to kind of ask questions. And when you get involved, get engaged with Brian, ask questions, it makes it so much more fun. With Brian's experience and expertise in marketing, omnichannel, and transformation, here's your chance to ask him anything. So please be proactive, pop in your questions in the chat. If Brian says something and shares, you like it, give him thumbs up. If you don't like it, even better. I really like to have a debate and discussion, so shout and please challenge Brian. Because I often think it's much more exciting. We learn more when we kind of like look at things from somebody else's perspective and, challenge the status quo. So I'm really excited to have your input to make this LinkedIn Live, really live to its name. So please keep the conversation going and join me in the chat. Let me just quickly have a quick look to see. We've heard from Dr. Aisha Shakil. Thank you so much for joining us. And you're from Karachi, Pakistan. Salam alaikum. Hope you're having a good day in Pakistan. It's probably a lot warmer than it is in Denmark and southern states. So it's really good that you joined us. So I'm looking forward to having your comments there. So to just warm things up, I can kick off with some questions. And then as our lovely listeners and audience join us, I can pepper their questions in between the ones I've prepared. But I just want to share that Brian is sharing his own views here. And just a reminder for you, Brian, please don't mention any brands by name because that we've got strict regulations in the UK in the pharmaceutical industry. So why don't we start by, you telling me about what drew you into pharma industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, maybe two or three things. I'd say very practically, it was actually Erasmus Holm, who I believe you might know, and some others, might as well. Uh, I had worked with Erasmus in the software industry doing a digital transformation, there as well. And he's also the reason that I've relocated to Denmark many years ago. But he reached out to me basically because he had an opportunity at MSD, and he told me, he was like, "Hey Brian, I got into pharma. Like I remember when he left, maybe he'd been in pharma about 2 years at that point, and he's like, yeah, pharma is one of the last industries that has kind of really digitally transformed. He's like, I think you would really like kind of the type of work and the challenges, that this industry can bring." And so I thought like, oh, okay, that's, one, I highly respect Erasmus as a peer and as a friend. And then I just was also kind of at a point professionally where I had been working in the software industry in a master data management and product information management company. And that's like all I was marketing about. It was just always talking about data and the value of data, etc. And I know to a lot of people that's really cool and very interesting, but I was talking about it all the time. And so then I thought, okay, well, the pharma industry and just the healthcare industry in general, here's an opportunity to where my marketing and communication skills and the teams that I help become basically better communicators and honestly deliver more value to customers or in this case HCPs. Like this can actually impact and change people's lives. So there's kind of that hey, here's a career path that actually can do some good in the world aspect to it as well.
That is so cool. I know Erasmus and I really rate him as well. And it's interesting that both of you shared the same experience. So tell me about your career path so far. So was it like about 9 years ago you joined pharma? How long ago was it?
Oh, no. I've been in pharma for about 5.5 years. So my whole career path, maybe I'll say real quick, and then I'll get into the pharma aspect. As you mentioned, I've been doing digital transformation for about 17 and a half years. Mm-hmm. And I see my former professor, Tyra Burton, is on the call. Hi, Tyra. Sometimes I'll actually speak to Tyra's class and explain kind of my career path. And it literally looks like this. I've jumped all over the place, if you will, from initially I started as a real estate agent in Atlanta. Then I was actually an IT recruiter for technical top secret and secret projects for the United States government. Then I got into B2B digital marketing transformation, and then ultimately into pharma. And while that zigzags all over the place, the commonality in all of this was these were all industries where initially, say before the internet, agents or reps were the gatekeepers of information. And then through the internet and just kind of this availability of information that consumers or, in pharma, doctors have at their fingertips, they're no longer the gatekeeper. And so, how do these reps use digital technologies to actually continue to build value and to build trust now that they no longer gatekeep that information? So yeah, maybe that's a little bit of how, my career path. As for pharma, I got into it 5.5 years ago, initially at MSD with Erasmus. And then I had an opportunity at Novo Nordisk when, they were going through a big omni-channel transformation effort to where I was their first omni-channel hire in what was called their region, Northwest Europe. Mm-hmm. And there I basically worked with their customer engagement teams and their marketing or brand teams. And then I would teach the organization this needs to be cross-functional, but to take them on an upskilling journey to go from single or multi-channel to offering, an omni-channel experience when communicating or engaging with healthcare professionals.
That is such an interesting journey, because other industries that moved faster in terms of adopting technology, using data to give them insight, you figured out how to do it in other industry, and you brought that understanding to pharma. So in some ways, I'm thinking about your journey, thinking it must have been so frustrating for you to come to pharma, because it's like as if you're going backwards. Sometimes when I travel to other countries, you think they don't have the proper infrastructure in place, they don't have roads, they don't have trains. So did it feel like going back in time when you joined pharma?
Yeah, absolutely. But I look at it in a positive way, if you will, and I don't mean this, what I'm about to say, to sound like arrogant, but I often would say, like, I come from the future, in the sense that, like, when I joined pharma 5.5 years ago, in the software company that we were working in, I was used to inbound marketing, marketing automation, heavily involved in social media and paid media advertising, SEO, etc. And then also just kind of like the agility of speed, both in executing campaigns, but also like looking at the insights, testing and learning, adjusting your campaign, your strategy in moving forward. So yes, I definitely recognized at first when I got into pharma, like, okay, this pace is a lot slower. Um, for reasons, like for good reasons, which would be regulatory environments, but then also for not the right reasons. But this is where my blended industry experience helps. The other reason for it being slow is just simply like fear of change. So I felt like, yeah, because I had been in these more fast-paced environments, it allowed me, from kind of an empathetic leadership style, to like not get frustrated, but to say like, okay, let's separate what you're really afraid from, what the barriers really are, and then like let's build a roadmap on how we can help you all get to, say, like marketing automation, or better brand planning with like a content calendar, and just kind of some fundamentals that I saw needed to be in place.
Yeah. It's, as I said, I find your, cross-industry background and also working in different continents quite interesting, because I've been dealing with a realtor for the last 2 months, selling our home and buying a new home. And I actually wrote a newsletter last month in November, drawing parallels between lessons I learned from the realtor, from a sales perspective, how they really focus about understanding the customer pain point and making that journey like seamless and enjoyable. And I think that I saw transferable learns from my interactions into the way pharma approaches sales. But I'm curious to know what principles have stayed with you consistently in the way you approach digital transformation, based on the experiences you've had with software and other industries you worked in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say a couple of things. First off is just kind of like mastering the fundamentals. And I think, regardless of the industry, this just comes down to like operations. So, in a lot of sense, this could be marketing operations or communication team operations, but it's just simply like how your team is organized. Are you ad hoc? Are you product focused? Well, if that's the case, maybe you should be a little bit more customer focused, more insights focused. And instead of ad hoc, you should be strategic, and you should have, like a game plan for the quarter, the half a year, or the entire year, right? So getting those fundamentals down is super important. I would also say, like, always just having like a curious mindset. So because I have seen these like barriers in various industries, especially when I got into pharma, when I would get a lot of pushback, say when we wanted to do like a social media campaign or, something along those lines. Ugh, there's many legal teams out there that just immediately will just say no, right? So I always try to encourage teams, and from the legal perspective, I appreciate their desire to be cautious. That's their job. They need to do that, right? But I always try and have teams work with like a how can I do this mindset versus, this is why we can't do this. So it's like, how, if I want to do a social media campaign, for example, for some sort of disease awareness, for example, don't just tell me, no, we can't do it. Okay, well, what are the legal or regulatory ramifications, and like, how could we shift it so that we are allowed to do it? Obviously, we can't mention the product. Okay, that's fine. But, so just that type of mindset. Yeah, and then maybe just two other things really quick. Do listen a lot, and especially like listen to your skeptics, because your skeptics, while sure you might get annoyed by that, if you will, but they're actually like your most valuable feedback into where, like, if you can eventually change a skeptic into an advocate, you've really won a heart and mind there, if you will. And then maybe one last thing is, change is uncomfortable and it takes time. So like when you're working on these digital transformations and you roll out a vision for that, if you're expecting everybody to immediately cheerlead behind you and like, let's go, Brian, yeah, you are going to be sorely disappointed. So you have to be okay with the fact that at times there's only going to be maybe a couple of people that are championing it with you initially, and that change to get those others on board, it can take 3 months, it could take 6 months, or sometimes even longer, and you just have to be okay with that.
Really good advice. So the can-do mindset, listen to your skeptics, and also accept pain when you're going through change. It's really funny, as I was listening to you, I was thinking about the cultural shifts, because I lived in 3 continents. I was raised in Iran, and in Iran, there's inherent can-do mindset, because there's so many restrictions. So if you stick to the restrictions, you never can get anything done. In UK and in Europe, I think generally people are law-abiding citizens. So people like stick to the rules and they just say like firm no. But again, now I've come to America, it's more sense of freedom. Like people want to be individuals. So did you notice a cultural shift in terms of response to, that can-do mindset between US and, West Northwest region in Europe?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think it's actually, I've been living abroad in Denmark, but yet working either globally or across European teams for almost a decade now. And as an American who barely traveled outside of America before I relocated here, I did take a very wait and see and kind of empathetically learn from others approach. Meaning I didn't want to just come in like a cowboy and just like make all these decisions and bulldoze everybody, right? But I could also say, definitely being based in Denmark, which is, Scandinavian work culture, which, if we're, stereotypically is very consensus based, right? But going back to like listening, where I found myself to have like a really good balance of both, and what I think has proven to work really well is, listening to everybody, if you will, point of view, how they might approach things, understanding that, getting their buy-in, but then also, yes, maybe it's just, embedded in me, taking charge, once you have all that feedback, okay, team, like, here's the plan, let's go. So I think it's very complementary if you can work in that way.
Perfect example. So, we often focus on modernizing teams. Brian, in practice, what does that look like? Where would you organizations should really start beginning with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think maybe this is just like some general advice, but we need to think of like, what is the end goal in mind? Is that, on the business side of things to have more sales, on the, say, HCP side of things to have a better understanding of, potential treatments that are available. And then we need to like work things backwards, right? So like that's the end goal. Then what do we need to do as a business, as an organization, as a team to achieve those goals? And how do we, like, I'm very big on being like customer focused. I think if you handle the needs of your customers, the relationships, the business, it will follow. I think we just live in a time where people don't trust companies that are not trustworthy and just trying to sell to you. So the way that you get sales, if you will, is by building trust and value, through those relationships. But yeah, so also, just to get more tangible, so it of course starts with like a clear vision, so you have to have a vision out there. But where I found a lot of success on getting things started is by like building coalitions and building communities. Mm-hmm. So, when I'm working in organizations to bring change, I'm basically kind of starting off initially, once I've, have the vision, etc. But I'm doing kind of like a lot of baseline analysis and stakeholder interviews. Where are the teams now? Where do they think they should go? How do they think they should do things to either engage with customers more or to increase, business, and just starting to get a baseline assessment. While I'm doing that, I've found, and again, I've done this in all of these industries, you'll typically find some champions right away. Not a lot, but you'll find people that are like either A, they worked at another company before that was maybe more advanced, and they're like, yeah, why don't we do that here? Or, they just like to keep up with trends in their industry, and they're like, wow, thank God, somebody is coming along and like trying to do this. So I kind of note those people down when I'm doing these initial assessment and stakeholder interviews. And normally then I will launch some sort of like upskilling program, so if that is, say, on the marketing side of things, this is helping teams understand how to plan their marketing strategies better, and then kind of just like their content and their execution plans, again, going from reactive to strategically planned. And instead of me being the sales guy, what I like to do is those potential champions that I've identified along the way is I bring them in. So if I'm having an upskilling session, of course I'm talking maybe half of the time if it's like pretty in depth, but if the other half, I can have a colleague of theirs share, or, from another country that's already done it before share, then that removes me from having to like sell this, and that allows people to learn and to get inspired, peer to peer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because in a way, you're not selling it. Somebody got a benefit from this change, and you're getting them to talk about the benefit and how, it brought value to them. I often think we don't change unless there's something in it for us. So you need to figure out what's in it for those key stakeholders. As I was listening to you, I was thinking of an analogy, like a simple analogy to kind of illustrate your point. We all brush our teeth. For years I use a normal toothbrush. And then my dentist said use an electric toothbrush. So I started using electric toothbrush because it removes plaque. You can kind of point it in the right direction and get coverage. And then a few years ago, my sister said to me, oh, I found this electric toothbrush that has an app. So it gives you feedback about how you're brushing your teeth. And I thought that was cool, and I bought it. And it actually times how much you take to brush your teeth. It shows where you're covering, where you're not. It shows if you put too much pressure. And I've transformed. I've not gone back to the normal toothbrush ever again, because I'm saying it's helping me change my behavior. I brush my teeth a lot better than I did, 40 years ago, because I've got that feedback loop. And I think with AI transformation in pharma, it has to be an immediate benefit for the end user, that it actually has a positive impact in their life, whether it informs them or, saves them time or improves their effectiveness. And I think then I'll probably be a really good billboard for that company, because I've benefited from their products. So if they mobilize me to go and tell others, I can recommend it. And I think what you're doing, that you're actually creating that, benefit value for individuals internally. You're mobilizing those advocates to go and share that news. And I think that's really smart, because their voice is much more powerful amongst their peers than you telling them. Yeah, that's really cool. So I've got another question for you. I actually want to encourage our listeners to ask questions, because this has become like a conversation between you and I. I've noticed someone else joined us and put a comment in there. So it's really good that you joined us. So I'm just going to remind you, here you've got Brian with 17 years of digital transformation and implementation of it through engaging people and shifting their culture. Here's your chance to ask him a question. So if you've got a burning challenge, put it in the chat so we can bring it into this conversation. So, there's a lot of chat about AI, and AI-driven content is getting a lot of attention in pharma. What do you see as a real opportunity for teams using AI, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I think AI is great, but maybe to your point, I like to think about, how I can use it, say, in the here and the now. Definitely a couple of things that, I've personally done over, I would say, the past maybe 2 years, maybe year and a half now, specifically in pharma, is the MLR review process. That's, something that is typically very resource and time intensive for pharma companies, and often a part of the company that is, I would say, bottlenecked, because maybe there's not enough people on the medical teams to be able to review all of the content that's being created. And then especially if you have, omni-channel people like me saying, we need more content. Well, okay. So using AI as kind of like a pre-flight check for references, and and medical claims, and however else you want to set that up, that's definitely something that a lot of companies are using now, that really helps in that process. A couple other areas I would just say is like in development, but I believe in like quality content versus quantity content. So I want to kind of balance what I'm about to say, but it has to do both with using AI to segment your content. So like if you don't have the resources to make, say, 3 different variations of content to serve 3 different types of doctors, you could start with a core piece of content that maybe was written for let's say cardiologist, and then you could run it through an AI and ask it, prompt it properly to then adjust that for an endocrinologist audience or a general practice audience. I've had success with that. It's not something that I would then just run with. I would then have, like a medical person review it, but it sure speeds up that process. I mean, that's something to where, like, if you're working with an agency on that, I mean, that can take weeks, if not months to produce. You can literally, get a good draft going in just a couple of minutes or hours, and then, you've really sped up your time. One last thing I would just say on, say, kind of the digital marketing side of things is like, using it for creating like rapid image variants creation. So if you're going to do like a paid media or a social media campaign, just multiple variations of like short ad copy, for example, or multiple variations of like imagery. But again, I go back to quality. You know, you don't want to like spam. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have the team in place that can then like quickly pull the ads that are like not performing and then narrow down on like which ones are performing.
Yeah, these are really good examples. In fact, this year I've decided to write the second edition of the Omni Advantage, and I've got a chapter on AI and a chapter on social media. And I invited a few like thought leaders in pharma to contribute their use cases of AI, because I think AI is kind of like a big hairy thing that people are really love it or scared of it. But at the end of the day, I think if you keep it simple, what's the problem we have that potentially AI can solve it? It can save us time or create efficiencies. And if we have a problem and AI can effectively help solve that problem or reduce the pain, then you get direct benefit from it. And I think by getting, again, the example you used earlier on, saying you get early adopters, then you get their voice to tell others, then you get the small dissemination of the positivity about it. But there are some fears and some concerns that stop us. I think if you had Erasmus in this room, he talks about his concern about people stop using their own brain because they're relying too much on AI, which is some concern, but I think it depends how you're using it. But I find, like this morning, I had a text message from a friend I spoke to 3 months ago, an industry friend, and he's asking me, he said, Mehrnaz, we had a meeting a while ago and you were using an AI note taker. Can you tell me what was the name of it? Because I'm thinking about using it because it's going to save me time and bring me efficiency. He's leading an organization of 300 employees. So I guess that would be quite handy, having AI taking notes rather than, you know, humans taking notes. So I'm kind of like thinking, at the end of the day, what's in it for people? How is it going to improve their life or make their life easier? And you talk about content. 75% of content created by marketeers never sees the light of the day, according to Viva Pulse report. And on average, only 4 pages of the detail aid are ever used. So maybe marketeers can use AI to streamline the amount of content they're creating, because most of it is not even used. So they can be much more intentional in what they communicate. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me that goes back to the quality over quantity aspect. I think, I think maybe the past 10 years, especially in pharma, the challenge has been being able to produce enough content. I think that problem has actually been solved. Mm-hmm. It's more like producing this evergreen content and then segmenting it to speak to the specific either type of HCP that you want to communicate with or around like their specific needs. So I think you can use AI to really fine tune, you know, kind of like evergreen or pillar content.
Mm-hmm. That's really good advice as well. So Brian, I was going to ask you, what advice would you give leaders who want to create meaningful transformation that genuinely improves how people work and engage?
Yeah. So, you know, with leadership, I've seen it on, you know, multiple levels where I've seen it happen like with a big splash and, you know, a clear vision and a lot of support behind it. And then I've seen, you know, just a, hey, you know, digital team, you know, good luck, like, right. And so I've seen it all at all levels. And then sometimes it's okay if it's like a small project, that's fine. But I would just say for leadership, like always start with a clear vision of, you know, what's the purpose of this? Like what you said, you know, what's in it for me? And by me, I mean the end user, if you will, but like layer that. So in pharma, what's in it for me? If I'm in an affiliate, for example, what's in it for us as a company? Why are we doing this? And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, what's in it for either the doctors or the patients or the medical community. So you got to cover like all three of those layers. But going back to this, like, you have to be, if you're in leadership, like you have to be visionary and you have to lead. So again, going back to the fact that like you might launch this or kind of be that executive voice of advocating this in the organization, you too also have to be comfortable that like literally at first 80 or 90% of your organization is going to be like, oh, I don't want to do this, right? You have to be comfortable with that. And so that would be, one thing. It's like have a big splash, have a kickoff, have a roadmap so people like know where we're going. Also explain to them that like this is an adaptation of our ways of working, and like we might fumble a little bit, but like we're not looking backwards, like we are going forwards. We're all in this together, and we'll kind of like fail forward. I know that's a buzzword. But then maybe like one last thing is, one thing I wish some leaders would have done to me along the way, and it's also just been a learning for me as I, went from being an entrepreneur to then working in small businesses and then massive enterprises, is when you're talking to someone, you're a leader, and you've brought in, say, someone like me, or someone, say, who's handling like the tech stack. It's often the tech people. They like to nerd out. No offense, I love them. But if you're a leader and like someone that you've brought on board to do the transformation is saying something that like you don't understand, don't just like shut them down or kind of ignore that. Just simply say like, hey, help me understand what you mean by this, because like I'm not getting it yet. And that's typically because like executives, they think and communicate in one way, and then people in roles like me and in others, we communicate differently. And so we gotta like close that gap as well.
That's really interesting, because I find sometimes with some functions in our business, I don't understand something. And I remember we were working with a specialist a few years ago, and I kept saying to the specialist, give me that clarity so I understand around, say, for example, search engine optimization. Can you help me understand? And I felt he was talking so much jargon and just so like woolly that after talking to him for 2 hours, I felt like I wanted to go and kill myself. It was just more frustrating. And more recently, I've been working with another specialist in the same area, and she brings so much clarity, that like deep jargons, the technical words, so I can totally understand what that means, why we're doing this, and how's that going to impact. So I kind of like think it's a bit of a two-way thing. Leaders need to be open to saying, I don't know, help me understand. And the specialist technical people need to bear in mind they're talking to someone who's not a specialist in that area. So they need to kind of like bring it down to the noddy level and help them step up to get to that level to understand it. So I think it's maybe a two-way thing to help them. But I'm just thinking like there's so many areas of business. If I want to progress fast, I'll go and get the specialist. I can do it myself, but I'll be a lot slower. So if I want to do, finances, I'll talk to our CFO. If I want to do, upgrading, our, search engine optimization, I will talk to an SEO specialist. And I think that's something maybe for the leaders in pharma to consider. If you're going for digital transformation, if you want to change the way your organization engages, and you want to use multi-channels, omni-channels, whatever we want to call it, it's not about the channels, it's about the intent and connecting with customers. You need to have the specialist to help you do that. In the same way, I want to get fit and be able to do what I'm doing now when I'm 90. I go to a gym, work with a trainer 3 times a week, and my progress is exponentially faster than if I was trying to do it myself. First of all, I wouldn't have the discipline, but I wouldn't know that and know-how. So,
Yeah.
Brian, you've been really candid on LinkedIn about your search for a new role. And I see you as a specialist who've done this in other industries, got the t-shirt, and it's got the cultural nuance and understanding. How is your search going? Because I would like you to take this opportunity to pitch yourself to see how you can actually help leaders to achieve the transformation, the shift they want in a pragmatic way that help them get better communication with HCPs. Because ultimately, I want pharma to stop wasting HCPs' time. Don't take up
Yeah.
patients' airtime, but add value to them so they can treat patients with more innovative, efficient products. So here's your time to share how you can help them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Well, yeah, I think I will start by saying what you were just speaking about it being a two-way street, actually, because that is something that I have had to learn along the ways is how do you communicate to those executives and to leadership to make change happen, right? And so I would say that I'm very passionate about, bringing change to organizations, right? And a lot of times that has been in the omni-channel space, and other times as well, that's also just been around like customer insights and really understanding, say, the analytics behind the customer journey and how we more fine tune that. So, the way that I help organizations is by, being that liaison actually between, say, senior leadership that has, many different disciplines that they need to have a grasp on, and bridging that between these specialist teams, right? Because here I'm working with brand teams, marketing teams, medical teams, communication teams, digital teams, even developers, a whole slew of these teams. And, I see Tyra had left a question as well, across different cultures and different regulatory environments. So for myself, maybe you can see my American football, or as some call it, a hand egg, in the background. I'm kind of that quarterback, right? To where I can put all of those different teams together, to drive that change. And I've had that experience both through, the pharmaceutical industry, but also other industries as well. So that way I can communicate to leadership and say like, hey, here is actually like a legit roadblock. I need some resources, some funding, et cetera, to say solve the slow regulatory approval. Sorry, legal. I don't mean to be picking on you right now. Or, hey, this actually isn't a roadblock. Literally, this is just change management and fear of change, and I know how to tackle that. So, yeah, maybe in a broad sense, it would be continuing to drive change within companies across teams and across cultures. That's really where I found my sweet spot.
Thanks, Brian. Maybe for cultural reasons, we should explain what's the role of the quarterback, because the way you describe yourself, you're a quarterback of pharmaceutical omnichannel. And I think a lot of people in Europe call football. In America, they call it soccer. And I'm beginning to learn more about American football, especially living in Tennessee. Come on, like you can't ignore the Orange University of Tennessee football. They're playing almost every other night. But one thing I've learned, and you can maybe build on it, the quarterbacks are often the team captain, and the quarterback is a conduit, decides who to pass the ball on so you can score faster. And they're the one who kind of like join the dots and make the results happen. Is that good understanding, or do you want to add to it? Because again, I'm very new to American football.
Yeah, no, I think that was a really good assessment. And yeah, I mean, the quarterback definitely is trying to bring results faster, but he or she has to take inputs from both all team members, if you will, that all play different positions, and from the coach and all different types of coaches, right? So that could be leadership, different levels of leadership or different disciplines within leadership. Um, and then make those quick decisions to make, plays happen. I love that we're on a American football analogy right now.
And you've got the American football have two completely different teams. They've got the offensive team and the defensive team. So the quarterback only plays in one team, and that's the team that wants to go forward. So here's the pharmaceutical leaders across Northwest Europe who want to adopt omni-channel and move faster forward. You've got a quarterback here who's open to, working with you. Maybe reach out to Brian to help you. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's quite a complex American football. There's more rules to it compared to soccer or normal football, as I call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a comment here from, is it Tyra? She thinks your emotional intelligence is really key in helping you and the organizations manage change. And I agree with that. I remember on stage when we were on Dubrovnik, the example you illustrated with the chair, maybe you want to talk about it here, was so powerful because people can actually physically see the impact. You put the chair in the room. Maybe it's better you say it, Brian.
Well, yeah, we were at a conference, the next conference in Dubrovnik, and a lot of the teams, and I've heard this for a while, just during that conference, we're talking about both cross-functional ways of working, overlapping communications, how to be more customer-centric, etc. And it's actually just kind of a play on, what Jeff Bezos does, where he has an empty chair in his meeting rooms to represent the customer. And so in workshops that I've done, it could be, an empty chair, which is what I demonstrated, on stage. It could be a stuffed animal. It could be just a place on the whiteboard, etc. But that is to represent your customer, your prospect, in this case, a healthcare professional. And so then, therefore, when you go into a planning session and you have a team that's like, oh, I want to, start communicating with, we'll just say, endocrinologists, and you're thinking about how your team, maybe there's 4 separate teams in that room, are going to email, send a webinar invite, have a rep visit, etc. If you do that exercise, you'll quickly see that all 4 of these different teams are going to have competing strategies and engagements ongoing, to where if you look back on that whiteboard, you would just see that the customer was bombarded with over communication. And, going back to what you said about, valuing HCP's time, for me as a pharma outsider, I've been in the industry for 5.5 years now. I'm very adamant about ethical pharma marketing and respecting that individuals are dealing with patients day in and day out. We need to respect their time. They're facing burnout, etc. So use that chair, use that space on the whiteboard, and go back to it. And when you see it's overlapping, fix the overlap. How can you do it in orchestrated journey or set of journeys over the next 6 months, that if you put yourself in the seat of that HCP, would you be like, wow, this company is emailing me every day and it's annoying? Or would you be like, oh, wow, this company sent me, a patient care guide for when I, enroll a new patient on their medication, for example. And a month later, this rep visited me, and after that visit, he or she, sent me this helpful, useful piece of information. What is going to lead a better impact and build a better relationships with, with your team and your organization? I like to think it's, putting the customer first.
That's really powerful. We all need empty chairs in our meeting rooms to visualize what's the customer's experience working with us. And we're tracking everything, including kitchen sinks, hoping with a stick, but it's really annoying them, and be much more intentional in our communication. I love that analogy. I'll never forget what you did, and it's lovely that you explained it here. I'm just conscious of time, so I just want to ask you a quick top tip. You talk about work-life balance is something everybody struggles with. I'm talking to people in December, they were saying, oh, I'm so busy, we're trying to rush off before the end of the year. What would be your top tip to help people have better work-life balance, Brian?
Stop being busy for busy's sake. Learn how to say no and to prioritize things would be my number one thing. Yeah. And then, aside from that, I used to say, family first. Raising my daughters has been like a core important thing for me in my life. But I would actually adjust that to first say, like, take care of yourself first. Are you exercising? Are you eating okay? Are you okay mentally? And, and if not, obviously, reach out, to someone to talk to, but like take care of yourself first so that you can take care of others as well.
They say on the airplane, in the event of drop in oxygen, put your own mask on first before you attend to others. And I think your advice about looking after our health, our nutrition, our mental well-being is important. If you're rushing around like a headless chicken, you're not going to be productive. So yeah, that's sound advice, to say no and do less, definitely. So Brian, you mentioned you read my book before we even connected. Just curious to know, was there anything in there that was your favorite or anything that resonated with you that you may want to share with those who are listening or tuned into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of touched on it earlier. So I love your book, first off. And yeah, that's why I was so inspired to reach out to you. And this is not a paid endorsement, everybody. But I would say like chapter 4 in your book, I know you said you're going to update it soon, but it's something we had just talked about. Chapter 4, it's titled HCPs Are Human Too. And I think about it from two perspectives real quick. One perspective would be the fact that, they're humans too. Like we've already mentioned, they're busy, they're burned out, they're being over communicated. So you need to be aware of that. But maybe on the digital transformation side of things too, it takes away all of the setting them on a pedestal and that they're like so much more different than we are. No, HCPs have a smartphone. They go to websites, they navigate websites. So like if you can, again, going back to like the fundamentals, when you're rolling out a web platform or an app or an email, just think like you're a user, you're a modern day user. Are you going to bounce off this website? Are you going to enjoy it? Then if you're going to not enjoy it, an HCP probably isn't either. So like they're also modern consumers just like you and I.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to share something maybe many people are not aware of. Brian, you experienced this yourself this year. This year has been a really tough year for pharma. I can't think of a single company in our industry that has not gone through transformation, reorganization, and people's livelihoods been put at risk. And you know what happens when that happens. The mind gets distracted. You're trying to figure out how I'm going to survive, how I'm going to support my family. In some cases, how I'm going to stay in the country where I'm living. And I had a conversation with the healthcare professionals 2 weeks ago. And they said, because of the pressures on finances, NHS is actually reducing some of the functions. Their job doesn't exist. And in the function where they operate, which is to do with medicine management, 50% of the job's going to be lost. So they humans, they're having the same challenges we're having. Another healthcare professional I spoke to a few months ago, her contract, the funding for the contract, she was working as a specialist nurse, came to an end. And, she was no longer able to stay in the specialty that she was really passionate about. She ended up going and taking another role in a specialty she's not so passionate about. So they're human, they're having the same challenges we're having through transformation and change. So we need to be really empathetic and listen first, connect with them. Because for me, I've been really interested in sales for many years, and I'm really passionate about it, because for me, sales is not about, doing something to someone. It's not about manipulating somebody to accept your offer. It's about truly connecting with them, understanding what's their challenge, what's their problem, and how your product and service can actually help their challenge. That's, for me, is good sales, is about addressing the customer's pain point and need with your product and services. And that's how you become a trusted advisor. It's not by coverage and frequency and shoving your messages in their face, by really listening and empathizing. And for me, that's an art that I think our industry can be really good at it if we just pay attention to what's going on around us, not being busy trying to do more, but just being present in the moment and connect with people. Brian, it's been incredible having you in this show today. Thank you for your openness, for sharing your insight. I'm sure the audience really enjoyed your contribution and your examples as much as I did. Also, I wanted to thank Tyra and anybody else who joined us and commented on the post, posted their comments there. And I think Tyra's shared with us that she thinks that learning to slow down and take things in and really experience what's happening is also really key. And that's part of the learning journey. So thank you so much, Tyra. And I want to thank anyone else who joined us. Thanks for being part of this conversation and for your thoughtful comments. I hope you find something today that helps you in your own work. Maybe it's a nudge or a reminder for you to slow down. I was reflecting today and looking back, we began this series back in March 2022. So over the years, have had the privilege of speaking with so many inspiring leaders. And as I look ahead, I want to keep finding ways to bring value to you and support, our shared goal of creating better, more meaningful engagement with healthcare professionals. And as you know, my purpose is to unleash the human potential to create a healthier world. And this morning, I had a spark of an idea for 2026 that speaks to my purpose. Next year marks 40 years since I stepped into healthcare, initially as a healthcare professional, and then I joined the pharma industry in 92. And I want to celebrate that milestone by giving something back. I'm planning a small initiative for UK pharma leaders to help strengthen the quality of their engagement with the NHS. And I will offer this as a gift. It would be a free gift that would impact your engagement. Call it a fine-tuning session, an MOT for pharma in UK. And I will share more details with you soon. But for now, I just want to wish you a very happy holidays. When the time comes to close your laptop and step away from work, I hope you really enjoy the break, rest well, and spend time with the people who matter most. Thank you, Brian, and thank you all.
Thank you.